This season, Instacart has your back to school. As in, they've got your back to school lunch favorites like snack packs and fresh fruit. And they've got your back to school supplies like backpacks, binders, and pencils. And they've got your back when your kid casually tells you they have a huge school project due tomorrow. Let's face it, we were all that kid. So first, call your parents to say I'm sorry, and then download the Instacart app to get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes all school year long. Get a $0 delivery fee with your first 3 orders while supplies last. Minimum $10 an order. Additional terms apply.
We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to This Song Is Yours, a music podcast where we chat to a new guest each week, talk about their life and creative endeavours, and talk to them about some of the music they love. Our show works by chatting to our guests about music, but also getting them to make you a playlist of the songs they love. You can find the link to our playlist in the show notes. Welcome to episode 35. I'm your host, Simon Fink. Our guest today is Ben Folds. The former Ben Folds 5 frontman has conquered music, TV, literature, and has now rejoined us in the world of podcasts with his new podcast, Lightening Bugs, Conversations with Ben Folds. In today's episode, Ben and I talk about his new podcast, the origin of the waltz, and truth and the role it played in his New York Times best-selling book. Here we go. Our guest today is one of pop culture's most recognisable musicians. His 1/3 of alternative rock band Ben Folds 5 has had an incredible solo career and has starred on TV shows like Community and You're the Worst. He's now adding podcaster to his resume. Please welcome to This Song Is Yours, Ben Folds. Hello.
Hello. How's it going, Simon?
Good, thank you, Ben. How are you today?
Pretty good.
That's good. Now, congratulations on Lightning Bugs, Conversations with Ben Folds.
Thank you.
You've conquered music, film, TV, literature, and now you're rejoining us in the world of podcasting. Are you able to tell us and the listeners a little bit more about your podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I was sort of led by curiosity. I've always had the one of the cool advantages of being in my work is seeing other creative people in their process and often struggling. I wanted people to hear a lot of different sorts of processes of creating and a lot of different angles on creativity in general, because I think everyone makes something and everyone has ideas, and that the sort of the struggles, the techniques, all the dramas of creating are done over and over and over again by some people, and you can go to them for advice and stories and perspective. You know, I've got an anthropologist so far, a music therapist, not as many musicians, and there's a reason for that, I think. And the other thing about the podcast that I'm doing is each podcast yields a song. I discuss with them, we're going to come up with a song, so let's come up with a phrase or something. And at the end, I've got the song done.
That sounds like a very cool and interesting concept. For you, what was it that I guess, as you mentioned, it's not as many musicians as one might think would be on like a Ben Folds podcast.
Yeah.
What was the decision, or where was it that you were kind of wanting to push in terms of including different backgrounds or different careers and not just musicians or like artists, creatives?
Yeah, well, I feel the musician's perspective is important, but it's just one perspective, or it's a type of perspective on how you create and what you create. And I think it's important for people to see, like I have a software developer on, and an inventor of musical recording equipment. The reason being is because all these different angles are all, to me, more likely to eventually strike a chord with a person who is not in the arts, because I want to stress that creativity is a human function and not just proprietary to the arts.
That does make sense. That's very fair. I know we're still in the early days of it. Have you had any creative process yet that you've looked at and gone, oh, like I never would have looked at it from that angle or seen it from that perspective?
I think you get that a little bit more. I find I get that a little bit more in one particular part of the podcast, which I'm calling New Week's Resolution. And what that is I have them give us an exercise that we're all supposed to do, hopefully, in order to sort of bring us closer to that person's way of looking at it. And those have each been pretty unique and different. I think that's the part that indicates to me, oh, I haven't thought about that before. And almost all of them are sort of like that. It's hard to remember. We're getting you're in the podcast biz, so you'll know that you go for getting a lot of them in the can in a row. And I'm just so in the middle of it and can barely remember, especially since I'm taking so much time on the songs. So after the episode is over, I'll take up to a week of working on the song and making it something that makes sense. By the end of that, it's hard for me to remember. I had a poet on who was particularly interesting about the creative process in that she was assigning the sounds of a word. She was, how do I put this? I mean, she was so eloquent about it, and I'm going to just chop it up into little bits, but the sounds of the words and the associations of those sounds have a tie in some way, by association and by onomatopoeia and by etymology, to different meanings of a word. And by exercising the saying of a word over and over again, and almost as a mantra, and then to begin to take the associations you have from that and write down other words, that is particularly interesting, because words do come from somewhere. Words do have an association. And if you just assign the dictionary meaning to them, you don't get as far. But for a poet, they're working with all this other stuff. So, I mean, I would say that was very useful for public speaking, for instance. You have a choice of 4 words. Go for the one that may have more inherent poetry in it, or hidden associations, or an etymology about it that really, like a word like prestige. Prestige comes from presto, magic, deception, sleight of hand, and then it's applied to selling condos. Go buy the prestigious, Sherwood Forest condominiums.
That sounds like it's going to be quite an interesting and incredible kind of episode to listen to.
Yeah, I think she was really, really interesting. Yeah, she is.
I'm curious for you, Ben. I know that you've been here in Australia now for over a year, and you've been living in an apartment. You've been working on new music and working on the podcast. In terms of creative processes, have you found that like the circumstances of where you are now, that's changed your creative process from like how you previously used to work?
It has. I mean, and I think that is the nature of creativity in general, is it is always a collaboration between you and your circumstances. And sometimes your circumstances lead to mistakes and things you wouldn't guess. And you need to give that collaborator enough of a partnership in order to get through without losing your mind. I was talking to John Batiste, who's a jazz pianist, musical artist, who is the band leader on Stephen Colbert Show. He was one of my guests. Yeah. And he said that he had to take on a new mindset or he would dissipate. And that mindset was, really locking into the mundane, formulaic part of music, so that the people who have like established formulas well before us that worked, that were born of inspiration, are there as templates, so that if he only has 30 minutes to knock something out right now because of the television show, being locked down in one place, all the extra time it takes to coordinate musicians online instead of in person, that he has now used that, and that's his collaborator. So he's now collaborating more on the shoulders of giants. For me, you know, like this podcast is a result of my going, how can I be useful in lockdown? I can't tour. I have extra time. This is something I've always wanted to do. When it comes to making music, I'm now making music more in the computer, more in the can. I always resisted that, and I was a bit of a snob about it. Behind me, you see this electric piano.
Yeah.
I carried a real piano to my gigs when I started, simply because I was such a snob about electric pianos. And when I say I carried it with me, I don't mean I hired some people to do it. I moved it off the truck with other people, a baby grand piano. So that's how much it meant to me. But now that limitation just squeezed right in, because we're here in this little apartment and no way to get a real piano in. So, I mean, I know it looks like a massive Russian gym from the 40s behind me, but that's my fantasy. So
it's whatever you have to do to make yourself feel comfortable while creating. I definitely understand that.
Pretty much it. Yeah.
We've spoken to a few guests over the last 12 months, and we know that you obviously did release a song 2020 and that there is some new music coming, but initially with those circumstances, did you find it difficult in any way when presented with, I guess, the initial situation of a pandemic and being stuck in another country?
Well, my first instinct after making sure that we had a place to live and you know, like the basics that I think everyone was, whether they were running around like like a chicken with their head cut off or not, we were all freaked out a little bit. And so I was trying to establish what life would be. And then after we got that sorted, my next thing was, well, this needs to be viewed as an opportunity to make something. So my first idea is, no, I make albums. Let's make an album. I found that difficult in these circumstances. I mean, it's always difficult to make an album. But I really didn't want to make a lockdown album. I could already feel very early how old. I mean, I looked back at the pandemic of 1918 and realized that for some weird reason, it didn't really make the history books until this one came back. I mean, I'd read a book about it years ago, and we all kind of knew it was there, but that was a huge, huge deal. It killed more people than the wars did. And I think what I got out of that was, they were sick of it. Yeah. No one wanted to talk about it. That's why it's not celebrated in the history books as this terrible thing, is because people just moved on. We're like, fuck away from me. So I think I sort of sense that, and I want to make an honest record. So, making an album about being locked down was the most honest record, but I thought maybe not. So I jumped into stuff like the podcast. I wrote the song 2020 because I found an opportunity to write a song in the ever increasing rate of events. The news cycle in the last 10 years has sped up to just neck-breaking speed.
Yeah, agreed.
Now, last year, 2020, especially for America, was a year where you would wake up and find out what year we were reliving. What's this? Okay, it's 1918. Oh, it's not 1918, it's 1930s. Great Depression. Oh, no. Change that. Change the channel. It's 1968. It's the Civil Rights March. And then back to, no. It's 1938. The rise of of Hitler. So we were in so many years all the time that I thought that's something to write a song about, not about being locked down, but about the speeding of time, and to go ahead and make one song commemorating 2020 for me. I wrote a bunch of other stuff too, but I want to sit on that and see where that goes, and I want to be with other human beings in the same place that are great musicians and help me bring that out, because I've been a little bit of a hermit,
That's very fair. I think that's a very smart way to do it. I feel like some lockdown music has already not aged, but you can see like one or two little cracks starting to appear in terms of how it does how it does age. With 2020, I think that it was balanced perfectly.
Thank you.
With this beautiful waltz behind it. Was there a bit of a not difficulty, but how did you find that balance between, you don't want it to be too comical, you want it to still kind of resonate and kind of hit the heart while dealing with the subject matter that you just described?
Yeah. I mean, a waltz is a good musical tool for, it has heart, but it has distance. And it's also very stable. Like a waltz is a very old, recognizable. I'm not trying to bust down any new musical barriers. It's a timeless sort of thing. So I felt waltz from the beginning of it. And I started a little more with a dirge. It's like, and it just sort of evolved towards a waltz eventually. And I think the one thing about a waltz, which I just mentioned, which a fairly famous songwriter in America that might not be as famous here, Ricky Lee Jones. Do you know Ricky Lee Jones?
I do know a little bit, not a lot, but yeah.
You know that song, there's an Australian that covered it, but I can't remember the name, I'm sorry, but it's "We'll be riding on the horses," yeah.
Yes,
little darling.
Daryl Braithwaite.
Daryl Braithwaite, that's right. That's Ricky's song.
I never knew that song was a cover.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a cover, and Ricky Lee Jones, she's one of my favorites, and I spent a lot of time with her one summer, and she told me this theory about the waltz, which I thought was great, which was that it never gets too close to you. It always keeps just a little bit of distance. So you can wear your heart out on your sleeve a little bit, but the waltz keeps you from being on someone's sofa and crying. It's like it just a little bit of distance. And I've just took that as truth and used that, because she mentioned how many waltzes I did and said it was because of my need to stay sort of dignified and slightly distanced from someone, that I wasn't just kind of bawling in their face.
The new music kind of marks the first time that you've been recording in Australia since, I think, 20 years ago with Rocking the Suburbs in Adelaide. What does, does recording in Australia, or does it bring back any kind of memories of that time?
This season, Instacart has your back to school. As in, they've got your back-to-school lunch favorites like snack packs and fresh fruit. And they've got your back-to-school supplies like backpacks, binders, and pencils. And they've got your back when your kid casually tells you they have a huge school project due tomorrow. Let's face it, we were all that kid. So first, call your parents to say I'm sorry, and then download the Instacart app to get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes all school year long. Get a $0 delivery fee with your first 3 orders while supplies last. Minimum $10 an order. Additional terms apply.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Well, it was very distinct when I was recording in Australia before I was in Adelaide. And in a little suburb near the airport called Hindmarsh, and it was in a church. The association is very different for me because of that. This is like it's agnostic location. I could be anywhere. I could be in a gym in Russia in 1940. So not really, but it did occur to me that when I was in Australia making rock in the suburbs, and it was a very isolated sort of thing for me too, because I didn't really know that many people in Adelaide. I moved there, but I didn't really know anybody. And I was in that world of, the kids were born, and it was just all kind of, I was like deprivation from the rest of the world. That is a little bit here too. But it did occur to me that, I could just kind of take that and go into a studio and play all the instruments myself, and kind of not like Rock in the Suburbs Part 2, but I could kind of understand that and latch onto it. But my interest is leading me a little bit more towards being with musicians. I've spent a lot of time with some of the world's best musicians in the last decade, especially the curation and work that I do for the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. as an artistic advisor to the National Symphony Orchestra. And that has allowed me to bring in really sometimes pretty eccentric artists and musicians that people would normally not know about, and I might not normally come in contact with. So I'd like to kind of go back and do that. Anyway, but yeah, there's a parallel a little bit, but it's mostly that it's just deprivation from the rest of the world, like real world, like hermit, like I'm a hermit here.
That's very fair. I was going to ask, we are actually based in Adelaide. I was going to ask whether there's any kind of relating to what you said, being able to take what you found here and platform some artists that might not usually be shown in other areas. Mm-hmm. Was there any kind of band or artist, or even anything, it might have been a Cooper's Pale Ale, was there anything that you kind of found in Adelaide that you've taken back with you in terms of just the things that hold a special place in your heart?
Well, I mean, I'd like to say that I was there early on, and seeing one of Sia's first gigs, which I did, but I have to say, like, I didn't see it. Like, I saw her at the Governor Hindmarsh for about, I think she was playing for about 20 people. Her mom asked me to come.
Yeah, right.
And I thought that she's a good, white chick soul singer. Got a lot of those back home. Didn't think about that much. I think she's absolutely brilliant. I do. I think she's great. I just didn't see it. I saw a little show she probably wasn't proud of at the moment either. And, it wasn't that formed. And then she did. So I'd like to be able to brag that I discovered Sia, but I have to say that I was one of the guys in the back with 10 ears that didn't get it. Right. The creative people I came up in contact with in Adelaide were all in sort of other areas. They were comedians or filmmakers, winemakers, a lot of those. Yeah. And I think that's very creative. In fact, maybe I should talk to one of those at some point.
That would be a fantastic idea. That would be a very interesting podcast.
Yeah, I think so, because there's creativity in it. It's just, you have to find, it can't be too much of a stretch. You have to actually find it and find the things that are useful for people. So until I understand that, we don't book a guest, even though I've had some ideas that were pretty off the hook. And so that's a great idea. When you really start talking to them, you're like, it's hard to find, some people aren't that good at talking either. So there's that. You probably know that from
we've had one or two, but most have been pretty good. It's we've been very lucky.
Yeah, good casting.
Yeah, that's what I'll say. Yeah, the book itself. So the title of the podcast comes from your book, A Dream About Lightning Bugs, which ended up being a New York Times bestseller. It ended up being massive, which I don't think was ever in doubt. You have had quite a illustrious career, but when you kind of sat down to initially write it or put it out there, was there any trepidation or nerves in in putting everything on display, because you are quite candid in it as well. It is quite a refreshing take.
Well, a book is not really a blurt. There's so many phases to it. You've got many safety nets. Writing a autobiographical stuff, I found, and I think no one's ever going to be, I hope no one ever becomes an expert, and that means they've written more than one or two autobiographies, which I don't think is probably necessary. But I found I went through seasons, I believe for me, and this is probably true of a lot of people, the struggle is what's true. And if it's not true, is it the way it felt? And how transparent can you be about those things? What's useful, what's not, what serves your overall story? These things, you just keep on working until you find it. A lot of chapter writing, I think that just, hit the trash can eventually. I went through a process of realizing that the things that I thought would be in the book weren't going to be in. What I would call like a dinner party anecdotal gold. These nuggets of stories that like are always a big hit. Two problems with those. One, you really have to be at dinner for it. And the other thing is they're often memories of memories of memories. And those memories have been clouded by the telling of these stories and the sort of, placing an importance or a significance to the story that was completely unfounded. When you're 10 years old and an event happens to you, your stenographer at that moment is 10 years old. And it's important because it's part of your development. But it's important to realize that the stenographer, the policeman that took the report was 10 years old. And then the person that filed that over the years was in different forms at different parts of the development. You have to go back to that and say, this is a brick in the foundation of my psyche. Is it a porous brick or is it a real brick? Like, is it really holding something up or is it just hot air? And a lot of times you're like, man, that's hot air. And you throw that out. Well, that's awesome because then you really can see your structure and then you can actually place something in there that actually was real. You can have a lot more empathy for you at that moment and you can have empathy for the people in a story. So if if you're 10 years old and a teacher does something that upsets you, and you're angry about that, you might carry that around your whole life because you don't have time to go back and look at it, think about it. But if you're writing autobiographical material and you mention that in passing, something in your heart should go, that doesn't feel right. Look at it again. The teacher was 25 years old. She just had 2 kids. She's in a shitty paying job. She was up all night grading papers, and you came in and made fart jokes in the class. How do you think she was going to react? And now as a 54-year-old, I can look at that 25-year-old and have empathy. I can look for the 10-year-old and have some empathy, and then I can step back at it and go, is this even a story worth telling? Nope. Take it out. But it was gold for years. It was like, man, I told that joke and the teacher came down on me. And it's like, it's bullshit.
How many times did you, reevaluate certain situations then? Because as you said, you don't revisit a lot of those memories until you are doing something like that. And then, how many times did you kind of come across something and go, that wasn't how it was in my mind? Or
constantly. Yeah. I question everything. Because it would seem that there were 2 opposing forces. One is I got to make a great book and it's got to be entertaining. At what cost? Fuck it. I got to make a great book, so it's going to be good. On the other side, there's like the truth. And they seem to diverge at first. You seem to think, if I tell the truth, that's more boring. If I allow this little slight discrepancy, entertaining discrepancy to lead the way. Maybe that's better. Someone picks up a book and they have a better book to read. Actually, those aren't a divergence if you look at it the right way. If you look at it the right way, because the truth as a structure holds the whole thing up so much better. Things happen in an order in your life, in any story, even chronologically, that is perfect. It comes from nature. And I got that from an investigative journalist, very famous investigative journalist named Jane Mayer. And she's written like Dark Money and all these great books that she'd written. She writes a lot, I think, for the New Yorker. Works now off on the side, the younger Ronan Farrow. And she's uncovered so much stuff. Now, I don't know her, but I listened to her podcast. And she talked about telling the story of any investigative journalism and how to make it interesting and make it true. And she found that the way she did it was to pin all over her office the chronology of what actually happened. Because until she did that, she didn't have kind of the force of nature on her side. This happened, and this led this to happen, this led this to happen. It might not make sense to you intellectually, and you might think you can come up with something more interesting, but the truth is a really, really good thing to hang it all on. And those golden anecdotes at dinner time and the things that you think are more entertaining end up not being a good structure. So even though it seems like you're paying a price for being truthful, I think you find when you start to really look at that there's an overall arc to your life. There's an overall thing to have learned, and it's best to be transparent and truthful about it. That said, none of us know how much of the things that we think happen to us are true. So a sort of ethnographic approach where you're transparent about who you are and about those things, I think then becomes necessary so that the reader can go, now, is it really what happened? Or is that the way it felt? But at least they trust that you really believe that that's how it happened, which is the most important part of it, because that's your story, your autobiography, your memoir, your memory of what happened. And I'm pretty sure after I jumped up and down on mine in a quality control sense, that it is at least something that I could take a lie detector test on. And at the worst, it's a distortion of my memory.
Yeah.
But that doesn't even matter at that point, because it's what I learned.
Yeah, no, definitely. Just very quickly, what was the name of her podcast?
Oh, it wasn't her podcast. Oh. I believe it was Ezra Klein.
Oh, okay. Beautiful.
I believe she was on Ezra Klein's podcast.
Oh, definitely.
And it was, I mean, it was inspiring enough to me to where I made sure I had someone get her email address so that I could write her at least a fan letter, if not, and I need some more advice. And now it's like, maybe I should have her on my podcast.
That's definitely a good idea. I'd be very curious to hear that initial episode where she's gone through what you've just described. But then,
yeah, because I don't think everyone would get the same out of it that I got. But we're all very centric to our lives at that moment. I'm listening to her, and she said that about chronology, and I was struggling with the certain issues about writing the book, and suddenly I was like, that takes such weight off my shoulders. Yeah. The truth. Just make sure I pin it all up on a wall or around the office and have all this in order. I don't have to write the book in order, but I have to understand it in order, and I have to understand what actually happened so I can see what impacted my thinking on the next event.
Yeah, no, that, it sounds fascinating. And I think it would be fascinating if you did have you herself and yourself in conversation on your podcast.
Yeah, I would love to at least thank her.
Ben, very quickly, we usually will chat to our guests about the music they're currently listening to while you are kind of not in lockdown anymore in Sydney, but it is, as you said, a little bit of a hermit. Is there anything that you're currently listening to or that you're really enjoying at the moment?
No. I'm so busy, I'm not really listening to music. We've been putting on like little radio station satellite things with the music of a given year. So the last few nights at dinner, that's what it's been. So last night it was 1973. And I've been digging that because this is kind of music that was formative to me. And I watch a lot of these little snippets on YouTube. You know, I consume music like people consume it these days. Before that, I was listening to a lot of Ravel and Beethoven. But really, that's been my short attention span view has been like, there's this guy, I can't remember his name. I want to say it may be Anton or something. He does these, let me find it. He does these guitar videos, heavy metal guitar videos that are absolutely brilliant. Like they're really, really, really cool. Let me find, I have a friend that we send them back and forth to each other. So let me find this.
Is it the metal guitarist?
His name.
He plays like metal riffs over popular songs?
He plays heavy metal arrangements and riffs around people's viral videos, usually screaming. Mm-hmm. His name is Andre Antunes. And it's actually really fantastic. Like that is like some woman doing a speaking in tongues, like kind of crazy church thing.
Yeah.
And what the reason I'm fascinated with it is because he finds the inherent musicality in it, which I've actually, you know, it's like auto-tune the news. Remember that?
Yeah.
Or anyone that puts music to a viral video, that's a genre, but he's particularly good at it because he explains to me what heavy metal is. How, like, I know it, for me, it comes from Stravinsky, from Wagner. Like, I think it has more of a lineage, a European 20th century, mid-20th century, late 19th century, you know, connection than it does, and there's little blues and stuff in it, but it kind of skips something, and it goes right to this kind of angry white guy thing, which is funny. But he totally shows where, in a way, why that is and where it comes from. It's showing all these angry people shouting, and the cadence of their diatribes. Pretty cool.
It is. That is very cool. I'll make sure that we put a link to it in the podcast episode as well, so that people can.
He's so great. I want to get him on my podcast as well. So.
Also, another great episode. I'm very much looking forward to possibly some of the season 2 guests after our conversation today, because it sounds like there's some very cool names coming.
There's a lot coming. Yeah, we've just got the longest list now, and it's going to be a lot of work, as you know.
That's very exciting, Ben. Thank you very much for your time today. The podcast is out now, and please check it out. It is Lightning Bugs, Conversations with Ben Folds. Ben, thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Good to talk to you.
And that's our show. A massive thank you to Ben Folds. His new podcast, Lightning Bugs, Conversations with Ben Folds, is out now on Kast Media. Whether you use Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts, we've left links in the show notes so you can find his show. We also want to give a huge shout out to Mike and MaryKathryn at Kopp Management for helping out with today's interview. You can find a link to our Spotify playlist in the show notes, where you'll be able to listen to all of our previous guest picks. If you like this show, please subscribe wherever you get your pods and stay up to date when new episodes are released. We release new shows each Thursday and Friday morning, with guest playlists streaming on Spotify at the same time. You can follow the playlist profile on Spotify, and you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Until next week, cheers.
Discover Hydro, the best kept secret in fitness. Hydro is the state-of-the-art at-home rower that engages 86% of your muscles, delivering the ultimate full-body workout in just 20 minutes. From advanced to beginner, Hydro has over 500 classes shot worldwide and taught by Olympians and world-class athletes. For a 30-day risk-free trial, go to hydro.com and use code ROW450 to save $450 on a Hydro Pro rower. That's HYDROW.com, code ROW450.